This episode of Fermented Adventure the Podcast features Von C. Brewing Company of Norristown, Pennsylvania. We had a spectacular time sitting down with Jay, Eric, Rick, and Mike, learning about Von C. Brewing Company and tasting their sensational beers. Do reach out to Von C. Brewing Company and let them know what you thought about the podcast. Cheers! Hello, ladies and gentlemen, craft spirit enthusiasts, and those interested in the intoxicating world of craft distilleries, cideries, meaderies, wineries, and the occasional foray into breweries. It's Rich Shane, and welcome to Fermented Adventure, the podcast, where we bring you the fascinating people that are making the mash, fermenting, distilling, bottling, pouring, and delivering to you some of the finest libations in the world. Before we get started, here are a few housekeeping items. Thank you for bringing the podcast into wherever you are and whatever you're doing. We truly are grateful that you have chosen to listen and make us part of your day. It would mean the world to us if you left a 5-star review. This helps us climb in the rankings, and it makes it easier for others to find us. Don't hesitate to leave us your comments as well. If the podcast didn't meet your expectations, tell us why. We're always striving to improve. You can find us at fermentedadventure.com. We are on Instagram and Facebook as Fermented Adventure. Email us at fermentedadventure@gmail.com. All right, FA Nation, let's meet our guests. We're here at Von C. Brewing Company in Norristown, Pennsylvania. I'm joined by Jay, Eric, Rick, and Mike. I'm Rich Shane. Dawn Ranieri's here, and this is Fermented Adventure, the podcast. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Welcome to the brewery.
I've been here before, but this has always been something for me selfishly that I wanted to do. We've seen each other at beer festivals here and there, but for me, this is a selfish desire to sit down and talk with you and learn about Von C, to share with the listeners and our audience. How did Von C get started?
So Von C all started as a senior project at Northeastern University. I wrote the business plan for this back in 1993.
Period. End of story.
End of story. No, before that, it actually got started back in 1860. We have a vast family history of brewing in Philadelphia. We're lucky enough that our father was a master brewer, our grandfather was a master brewer, our great-grandfather was a master brewer, literally dating back to 1860 to Christian Schmidt, who started the brewery in Philadelphia.
What's that like for you, being family, to have that lineage? You know, growing up with it, knowing the history.
It's we always knew we were going to do it because it's in the blood, and that's really what brought us to where we are today. From myself getting 50 cases of Schmidt's for graduating high school to Ricker there getting 500 cases of Schmidt's sent down to Lynchburg, Virginia. It's been a great year, but it's been a great life of growing up with the brewing in the blood, you know.
As the family and what this has been in your blood, what you said you always knew this was something that you were going to do, but what was it and how was it received when you said, all right, we're starting to search for the building and the equipment and all those things that has put this all together?
I think most of the people said, what the heck took you so long?
Really?
Including our father.
So what the heck did take you so long?
Well, I think our lives, our kids, our real jobs got in the way. You know, it was a dream. I mean, when he first wrote the business plan, there was no such thing as a tap room. It was solely distribution. You know, what were maybe 300 or 400 breweries at the time, and you know, people were probably laughing at you, saying, "You really want to do something like that?" But we've talked about it. We wanted to do it. We sort of said, okay, our lives got in the way. As we're all a bit older doing this. I just turned 60. I don't know why I waited this long to get into retail, but doing the brewery is great. We're having a lot of fun with it, and obviously it's our everyday jobs as well. But it's something we're doing that we enjoy, and having the family history has really made it that much better.
Besides your family and friends saying what took you so long, what have those conversations been like? After Schmidt's closed until you opening, what's that transition been like from the closure to now, and how just those conversations with people?
I think a lot of it happens for a reason. Back in 1993, if I would have opened it up and had the ties that we have in this building to Schmidt's, we probably wouldn't have laughed out of the microbrewery group before we got in. Our OG pills that we're super proud of today, if we would have brought that out back then, people would have kicked us out of the group. That's not a craft brew-esque type of beer. That is the original recipe dating back to 1860 with all the adjuncts that are in there. So having to wait the time that we did, and now to see that be so accepted and people are loving it and it's retro and it's cool, wouldn't have happened if we opened back in 1992 or 93.
Retro was not cool back then.
The ties to big beer back then would have been bad. So having to be able to do it now and actually kind of have it be an ode to Schmidt's is very cool. We've had Schmidt's Day here, and to see 20-some old Schmidt's employees reminiscing, and haven't seen each other in 20-some years, patting each other on the back and drinking that beer. It's been very cool for us to sit back and watch that from afar.
Yeah, so for the listener or the people that are listening outside of the Philadelphia area, Schmidt's Brewery was a mainstay. Schmidt's Brewery was a figurehead in the brewing industry, as you said, dating back to the 1800s. And to bring that back and to recognize the lineage and the history, I'm getting like the hairs on the back of my neck are standing up. Because this is, I said selfishly, this is a connection to my past history. This is a connection to Veterans Stadium and going to the bar, and with my grandfather when I wasn't old enough to drink. Although my mom, who now listens to the podcast, said that never happened, but I think it did. But in the way of Philadelphia beer, people would go to the bar and they wouldn't say, I'll have a beer. They'd say, I'll have a Schmidt's. That's the way it was. And I wonder when you said, look, you wouldn't have been able to transition from that time. Because I guess when you're saying that, Jay, I'm thinking, it's like, new Camaros are the old Camaros, and that's cool again. So it wouldn't have been just creating like the 1970s Camaro, right? Because that wasn't the received car.
No, yeah, it's the nice part about it is you're right. It's not just the old classic. There's everything here. There's everything from the IPAs. We have the Hellas. We have beers from all over the spectrum, which is great. Our brew team has done a heck of a job kind of rounding out. We talk a lot about the OG pills, but our flagship, Walking on Clouds Hazy IPA is, sells just as much, if not more. You can kind of tell how old the average crowd is in the tap room each night by what's the top seller. If it's a little bit older crowd, you come in the next day and you look at the numbers and it was OG pills that sold the most. If it was a little younger crowd that night, okay, Walking on Clouds probably sold the most. But yeah, like the newer Camaros of today that they're trying to make look retro, we have all the options that are there. The backup camera's there. That's the Walking on Clouds. The side mirrors that are blinking if there's someone in the passing lane. That's the Stony Creek. So that part has made it very cool.
How did you decide and settle on Norristown? Knowing that you're a Philadelphia brewing tradition, how did it come to be for Norristown?
Well, there is history in Norristown. So Schmidt's owned the Adam Scheit Brewery over here on Main and Markley, which can still be seen. It's still standing, although it's office buildings now. And then the Cube Smart there is actually, it says the Adam Scheit bottle house on it. So that being about a mile from here, maybe even less, is so we have history of being in Norristown at from the 50s to the 70s. Schmidt's owned Adam Scheit Brewery.
Yeah, we were on an extensive building search. It took us about 4 years. We had a lot of boxes we wanted to make sure we got checked. We chased some buildings in Philadelphia in the Navy Yard for way too long, because that's, unfortunately, the buildings were beautiful, but they were so big and trying to get through all the red tape was not easy.
City, yeah.
This building obviously checked a lot of boxes for us. As Rick already said, we're less than a half mile from a plant that our family ran and had a lot of history to it. If you're looking around the building, it's got a lot of bones in this building. A lot of beams, old wood. It's open. It's huge. A lot of natural light coming in. So it checked a lot of boxes for us.
We wanted that industrial feel, and it's worked out great. Especially coming out of COVID, has been helpful with a building like this. As you can see, we have the big fans and the high ceilings, and that sort of helps as people were, because we opened we opened June 5th, and May 31st is, when they sort of pulled the restrictions. So, it sort of made the, that was helpful. We wanted this feel, but hopefully we weren't planning for COVID. I don't think anybody
Nobody was planning for COVID.
But that is helpful here because I think people were feeling comfortable in here because of the the high ceilings, large space, and the fans moving the air around and stuff like that, I think was helpful. Plus summertime, the garage doors open, those windows all open up, so it's.
You talk about planing. I mean, behind me, you've got this huge, extensive setup for most craft brewers don't have this much capacity. Was this part of that plan, or did it just say, you know what, we're just going to go big and go for as much as we can? Here's the dollar figure. Let's just see how much we can put in this space.
No, I'd like to say go big or go home, but it was planned out a little bit better than that. We knew we wanted a 20-barrel system. It's big enough to be commercially viable, and yet small enough still to be able to round out and do some small trial stuff on it. We're super lucky to have a 20-barrel system, but we also have a 2-barrel system, which helps us kind of round out the 19 or 20 or so things that we have on tap at all times. You know how fickle the craft beer drinker can be. It's not so much what I had here last week and I loved, it's what you have that's new. So that 2.5-barrel system kind of lets it rotate for about 2.5 weeks on our taps in the tap room, and then that can go away, come back as something different, or go away and get scaled up on the 20-barrel system and become one of our coolers.
Knowing that you have that flexibility, and how do you guys decide the new latest, or it's like four guys here? How do you make the decision on, hey, what goes on the tap, or what you're brewing, or something new, or get rid of something old? How does that work?
We are super lucky to have Mike on our brew team here. He's figured out a way to deal with this three-headed monster, which is the three brothers who own it. And realistically, he takes the wheel and steers where we want to go. We give him our ideas. We bring him some of our favorite beers.
Yeah, Mike knew from
we wanted to talk
early
about.
on when we brought him on before we were open and started talking to him. With our history, we wanted to have that true German, traditional lagers. So he knew that. Obviously, we're going to be a craft brewery. You have to have the IPAs and the variety. So Mike and the brewing team, we haven't told him no, don't do this or don't do that. He does. We want to keep those full, those 19, 20 taps up there, and we have our 9 or 10 core beers that we have cans and we're distributing. Those are always going to be here. The one thing that I said from the beginning is I want to have those core beers. I want to be able to go to that brewery and come in and say, give me that OG or give me a Helles or a Vienna Lager, and that better be there every time I come, and it better be the same every time I come here. And sustainability and and the repeatability in the beer industry is, to me, very important. I've gone to other breweries and I come back and I'm like, oh, you had a really good lager last time. Oh, well, we're beyond that. We're moving on. And sometimes they never bring those beers back. And we wanted to have the core beers, plus we have the capacity here to have all those experimental type beers. So
we were super lucky to find a head brewer who kind of had our wheel, right down the same road we were driving. He wanted the same beers we liked. We liked the same beer he likes, and thank gosh he's done a great job.
Yeah, I don't think we've upset him too much.
I'm still here.
Well, Mike, talk about your brewing history and how you got into the brewing world.
Yeah, kind of the same story as most brewers. Started as a home brewer. I was living in the Philly area, in South Philly, for the longest time, and wanted to try to make my way into the craft brewing scene, but it just didn't really seem like a viable path at that point. I actually, my wife and I moved to Hawaii for a few years, and when we got there, we met a friend of ours who was brewing at a small brew pub there, got me into it, and that place was a little bit of a trial by fire. We were brewing like 6,500 barrels one year on a 7-barrel system, which anybody in the industry will know that it's a little bit insane. That's way too much beer for such a small system, but it kind of taught me kind of repeatability and kind of how to brew as much beer in a limited space as possible. But just doing it over and over and kind of honing just repeatability. I did that for a while. I moved back. I was brewing in Jersey for a little while. We actually moved back the day that we landed. Moving back from Hawaii was the very start of the pandemic. It was the day that they told you to stay inside for, what was it, a week or so? That was the day we landed. So yeah, I brewed a little while in Jersey, and now I'm here.
So this is really like the quintessential. Everything has really come from that start of the pandemic, and as we talked about, it wasn't part of the business model. How has it impacted? How did that impact your business, or what you mentioned? As far as the space being conducive, Rick. But were there other things that worked, or you had to pivot and change a little bit?
We signed our lease on 3/3 of 2020, about 10 days before the world shut down.
Trying to do a build out during that was not fun.
Yeah, we sat in here. There was no electricity, no water. That demising wall, it was one big warehouse. The demising wall there to separate our space wasn't even up. And we sat here out of basically a cable spool as our table, and the three of us, our wives are taking pictures, and the landlord, and we're like looking at each other like, do we sign this thing? We've been looking for so many years, and we're like, yeah, this thing will be done by summer. But obviously here we are 3 years later, and it's still sort of lingering. So, but the main problem we had too is we had negotiated some free rent into our lease in hopes that we'd be able to get open as the build out was complete, and of course that didn't happen with COVID, and once the workers were able to get in here, plumbing crew, someone would come down with it, and that would add another 2 weeks to it, so we had a lot of things to deal with at that point too. So Jay can probably expound a little more. So
yeah, doing the build out during COVID was not fun. You literally had to put the blinders on and just keep doing what you're doing and not think, what the heck am I doing? I left a really good paying job, a very comfortable job to do this. How am I going to get someone to come down a dead end street in Norristown so I can walk out with a mask on with a 4-pack and try and sell them a beer, where I can't show them this beautiful space we did.
Can't tell the story.
Can't tell the story. You can't even see my face. I'm like, this is horrible.
And the story has been huge. I mean, I was probably a naysayer that the story would sell like it has, but the story that we have has been huge, and I think it goes back to the retro is so cool now. And
well, as we already touched on, Schmidt's was such a staple in Philadelphia. At one point in time, 2 out of every 3 draft beers that were poured in Philadelphia was a Schmidt's beer. So the local following it had, we hoped it was still there, and we hoped it was as strong as we thought it was going to be. And I think we've all been kind of bowled over. It's been stronger, Before we even opened our doors, we get a call from, our great partners of ours, McGillen's Old Ale House in Philly. And, we weren't even brewing yet. And he goes, I want your OG Pills on tap for Beer Week. Can you make that happen? Yes, we can make that happen. So that kind of support's been great. It's been really well received.
So for sense of transparency, my father was McGillen's accountant.
Oh, yeah?
So, this is where it all kinds of come together a little bit, even for me, and the connection. And I admit I don't know the full story. Why did the brewery, knowing that there were that many tap handles pulled, why did the brewery stop?
Well, basically, my grandfather got sick, so he was the last family president of Schmidt's. So in '76, he passed away. And at that point, the other family members wanted to sell.
They sort of wanted out. They
wanted out. They didn't want to continue to run a brewery.
And there were some financial issues as well. And they tried to go to the city. Our father was the CFO of the brewery at that point, and they tried to go to the city because they had over 1,000 workers at that time, and they tried to see if the city would. Give them some tax cuts to try to keep them going, and that was the Mayor Good days, and the city was bankrupt at that time. So they're like, we don't want to lose those jobs, but we can't assist.
We don't want to lose the income, but we can't help you with the income.
Right. Basically,
yeah.
So that and our grandfather getting sick and passing away, I think all that, and not having the rest of the family in line that weren't working there, I think they just want to sort of cash out and move on. Whereas there's some that want to try to keep it going, and just
unfortunately, back at that time, it's the same story for a lot of the smaller regional brewers. The bigger brewers, Miller Coors and Bud, they came in with their $1 million advertising, lower their prices, and it really put a hurting on the smaller regional breweries like Schmidt's was. And the whole time that happened, and what the brothers here already went through, it just it put a real hardship on the brewery. So they ended up selling to Flommer, who had it for about, 5 years, 6 years, 7 years? Was it? Unfortunately,
most 87. He had
He
through
sold it
87.
in, they went out of business in 87.
Unfortunately, most of those is he was doing business behind a cell, which makes doing business pretty difficult. And the brewery ended up closing in 87. So my brothers were lucky enough to get to work in the brewery, and I did not. So I think that's what kind of fueled my fire. At some point in time, we got to redo this because I never got my shot to be in the brewery where they did.
How did you settle on the name of Von C? How did that conversation happen?
Well, when
That
there's
was our working
8,000 some
name.
breweries there.
That was our working name from day one, and Jay could tell you he knew it was going to be that.
Other people said
8,000 some
no.
breweries there, we tried every other name out there.
Like,
Three
this
brothers
sounds like
taken.
cool, but
Three fools taken. Three drunkards taken. So every other good name that we tried to get, it's amazing how many of them were taken. And as they've already stated, Von C was our working name throughout the entire process. And at the end of the day, I'm like, screw it, it's Von C.
If you see our last name, we couldn't go with the full last name. I don't think anyone would ever have found us on social media. They say, I heard about this Von Czoernig and trying to find it. We probably would never have anybody in here. So Von C is easy and sort of flows. And
Thank you for making it easy on the consumer. I think that was really the niche that you stuck with. How can we make this easy on the consumer? You look around this space and you see all the Schmidt's memorabilia. Who was responsible for saving some of this or keeping it to where it never got lost or ended up, in a dump somewhere?
We got lucky. We got a lot of family members who had a lot of old keepsakes that they were more than happy to bring and let us scan in or actually hang up. And things surprising to us, once we opened, people would bring stuff here. People said, hey, I had this in my man cave, and it doesn't belong there. It belongs here. And would actually give it to us, and we're just absolutely blown away by that. The amount of stuff people have brought and given to us. And
so that clock that you see over there, the Brewers and PA guys, Chad, if you know the Brewers and PA guys, Chad has his own, man cave that has all sorts of beer memorabilia up. And he bought it one day, and he goes, this would look great in my man cave, but for those of you in the know, there's only one place you can go. And they actually brought it down that day to us. And, I'm like, well, do you want anything for it? Like, how much? And he's like, just a couple beers, we were doing the milk pours at that point, and, and then we have it up ever since. So people like that bring stuff in. We had a family come in. There was he came in with his father. They lived in the shadow of the brewery down there in Fishtown. And when they started knocking some of the walls down to pull the tanks out to sell and what have you, he lifted, his son was like 8 years old, he lifted him over the construction fences to grab a couple bricks because that's where they grew up and they wanted to have the bricks. And they told us that story when they're here. And I asked him, I said, I'm not asking for the bricks, but I'd like to have them on display there. And he said they mean too much to him. I wouldn't want anything to happen to him. So I understood that we didn't take them. But people bring in stuff all the time. I think we have 3 or 4 big Tupperware things that people say, hey, I had this in my basement. You guys need to have it now. So we sort of keep trying to rotate stuff in our display case over there by the door. So
you're a working brewery that has become a beer museum of Schmidt's history, right? I mean, there's those two aspects to what you're doing for those that are connected to the Philadelphia area. The history maybe be the catalyst for stopping here, but the beer you're making and what you're paying homage to what you've made in the past, I think is what connects everybody to where you are today.
I think it's definitely a nice little, as you said, a little stew being made there. It's coming out with some a lot of good ingredients in it, but it's making a pretty good meal.
We've also hosted a couple Breweriana events. Breweriana is a classic beer memorabilia collecting group. Rich Wagner, he's a local brewery historian, knows everything about every brewery that's ever been in Philly and surrounding areas. He's hosted a couple events here. So on top of the Schmidt's history and the Adam Scheidt brewery, which was in Norristown, which you guys talked about earlier, it's all kinds of classic breweries being kind of propped up and showcased during these events, which is
it's really cool.
Yeah, it was great. We did when Rich Wagner did he's done 2 of them so far. One on Adam Scheidt and one on the Schmidt's. basically he did already a story of the rise and fall of Schmidt's, and then he sort of did the rebirth with the three of us, sort of added that to the story. And he did a big thing here, and we said earlier, we had so many retirees come here. We do have the last brewmaster at Schmidt's that is on our team. Adam Brosetti worked with Mike in the beginning to come up with the recipe for the OG Pills. He had the recipe, and they worked together to sort of, get it into, the scale to the size that we're doing here. And, so he brought, we had like 25, 30 just old retirees that came in here. And it was funny because it was all throw that 20 on the bar, with their, and then if they left, they would just put their glass on it to go to the restroom or something. And it's like the old time. Unfortunately, that 20 didn't go as far as it did back in the day, but it happened actually to be our biggest cash day that we've ever had because so many just brought cash. So many people just pay with credit card now. We don't, we're not always getting tons of cash, so it was fun to see. My dad was here, who's, he's going to be 83, but he was here and reminiscing with a lot of the employees that he remembered and stuff like that. So it was fun. And we had our dad during the build out. Our dad would come in here and just grab chairs and watch us people start putting the tanks up and stuff like that. So it was fun. He just wanted to be here to watch it. So
well, let's do this. Let's do a little tasting. We'll talk more about the heritage and what you're making now, Mike, how you're bringing your personal flair to what's going in the glass, and we'll come back in a second, okay?
Sounds good. Let's get some beers.
Pardon the interruption. If you like what you hear, if you love what you're hearing, please share the podcast. Please take a screenshot of the podcast, post it on your social media, tag us, just to let everybody else know about Fermented Adventure, the podcast. We'd be grateful for your help to grow our podcast. We're back, and we have a buffet, a smorgasbord of beer in front of us. I love these tasting flight paddles that you would use as the shape of Pennsylvania. Talk about the origin or the idea for that. Eric, you seem to be like, oh, that's Pennsylvania?
Yeah, that is Pennsylvania. I don't remember where that came about, though.
Local machine shop was nice enough to cut those out for us.
That was their idea?
It's my idea.
it's his idea.
Business plan going back to 1993.
That was in his original business plan.
Yeah, the flight paddles are going to be in the shape of Pennsylvania, right?
Yep.
Well, this is awesome. So we've got 5 beers here that I think right now tell your story. And, if I'm coming into your brewery and I'm asking for that, let's say that Von C experience, this kind of typifies, the personality of what you're brewing. Talk us through this. Number one, is this the OG Pilsner?
It is. Yep, that's our American lager, our recreation of the Schmidt's original recipe.
Now, I'm curious. Cheers and Prost, and what was said around the Von C table when doing beer? I don't know. Just drink it and
drink up. Bottoms up.
Bottoms up. I'm curious. As you're brewing this, Mike, and as you tasted this for the first time coming off as a beer, what was that like? Knowing again the lineage and the history to this beer, because this is, as you pointed out, this is the Schmidt's recipe.
Yeah, I think for most of us, especially my age or younger, like your first real exposure to Schmidt's is maybe on stair number 4, running back up from the basement, grabbing one for your dad, and then or your grandfather, and then getting yelled at why they was open when you got to the top of the stairs. But we did a couple small test batches in the garage homebrew system, and I can't lie and say I knew exactly what Schmidt's tasted like after all these years. But as soon as I smelled it, I said, that's it.
I was able to help with that because I worked for a distributorship that Schmidt's owned for 10 years. So it wasn't our family at the time, but it was Flommer, but I ran a distributorship that they had up in New York. And I had only Schmidt's at my wedding. Everyone was wondering what we were going to do at my wedding because I always had the cans, and cans were, now cans are the big thing, but, I was like, no, we'll class it up, and we had the old corrugated boxes with the returnable tall necks. So I brought down like 50 cases for the wedding. And the funny thing was, I kept filling up, the back room of our mom's house, and she's like, "Why are you bringing so much beer?" I'm like, "I can get it for $3 a case," and I'd rather have too much. And then he was on his way to his senior week, so there was the Bucket Brigade of all his friends' cars, unloading it, taking it down to the shore. So
you never saw a more efficient Bucket Brigade than that. Free beer for senior week, we were in.
But another quick story is on the first time that we brewed it. When I say we, I really mean Mike and Adam at the time. And Adam, when he was in the tanks and had that first taste of it, he sort of took that sip, looked up at us, and said, "Nailed it." So it's. Because he was the one with the recipe, and he's 25 years of the brewmaster at Schmidt. So, but that was a fun story.
You said something really interesting. It wasn't the taste that brought you back; it was the smell that brought you back, and that is very interesting to smell that for the first time and be brought to that either that childhood experience or whatever that experience was that you have. It was that smell, and that's the first thing that I get is the nose on here that takes me back, and that's fascinating to me. Mm-hmm. And I don't, those that may have tasted it and said nailed it, that's their history, that's their experience with the beer, and that to me is fascinating.
Yep. I mean, as you already said, Schmidt's was huge. They had over 3.5 million barrels annually, and even though it was only distributed in 15 states, it was in the top 10 of breweries in the U.S. So it had a great local following.
What's next?
Next up is our core hazy beer, Walking on Clouds.
Okay, so Schmidt's, I'm curious, going into that hazy realm, I mean, you're Von C, but, now this is what the consumer is looking for. This is what they're asking for. What has it like? Oh, you're making an IPA? I mean, what has that conversation been like around the table or at the brewery?
Well, this is our hats off to Mike Froelich over here. He really can brew and formulate various different beers, and this Walking on Clouds was his creation. He brought this to us, and the first time we had it, we said, phew. Same conversation.
Three of us had nothing to do with Walking on Clouds. It was all Mike.
Same conversation as the OG Pills.
Nailed it. We just said yes. It's very good, and let's make it one of our cores. So that was the idea, and it's probably been number one since day one. So.
Mike, who impacts you? Who kind of inspires you? Are there mentors in the brewing industry that you look to, or some things that you may have or have had that you're looking to try to put your own stamp on and recreate?
I think kind of across the board we try to stay pretty much on style. We're not trying to reinvent these styles that have been honed in on and perfected over hundreds of years. So. Anybody out there who's doing really, really good two-style beers, especially lagers, we really want to be known for our lagers here. We enjoy brewing our IPAs and pushing the boundaries with them a little bit more, but as far as our lagers, we really want to try to stay as on style as possible on those.
Well, one thing I'll say too with Mike is everything that he brews is pretty true to that style of beer. Like he did a grisette, and people are like, grisette, who does that? But when I read about it and looked at it, I mean, it was the taste to me was true to what was described in what I was reading, and I don't think I ever had a grisette until he brewed it. But I knew of the style and everything. But our Kolsch is very good, and it's a true Kolsch style, and Mike, he was very adamant that we called it a Kolsch style because technically anything outside of Cologne cannot be called Kolsch because it has to be brewed in Cologne to be Kolsch. So we made sure we had Kolsch style on there, and Mike is very true to that. So trying to when he does a beer that it's true to how that beer should be.
Back to New England, I think what we like most about this, and it's a well-balanced IPA. You get a lot of mango, grapefruit, passion fruit on the tail end of it, but it's not too much of a punch. We have some other IPAs that have more of that punch for those who like that kind of thing. But I think this is a really well-balanced IPA. It's smooth. It's got great mouthfeel. I'll let Mike tell you why, but it's been a very good selling beer for us.
A lot of oats.
A lot of oats?
Yeah, I mean...
That's the mouthfeel. That's the creaminess.
Yeah.
That's the body of this. And that's the one thing beyond just... Jay, thank you very much. Normally, I'll kind of give my experience to the beer, but you said everything I was thinking and feeling just to a T, so thank you. But that mouthfeel, that for an IPA, I don't recall having that creamy, that full body mouthfeel like this.
Yeah,
has.
It's all about getting your water profile right, and just getting the grain bill right. This beer is definitely a lot drier than a lot of other New Englands out there, or hazy style IPAs. That's what I prefer. It's done well, so I guess some other people out there prefer that too. But I don't think any of us here really like those overly sweet hazies. I don't understand how the mass public can drink more than one of them sometimes when they get as sweet as some of the other ones out there. There's a lot of people around us doing really good ones. This is our take on it. It drinks a little bit drier than some of the other ones out there, but I think it kind of helps to kind of highlight some of the hop aromas that we're trying to push in this.
It also doesn't stick with you with the aftertaste because of how dry it is.
And I think because of that creaminess kind of coats your taste buds too, and going down. So you're not left with the brightness that you would find in most IPAs that you kind of just sit there and go, and some people appreciate that
I didn't
bitterness.
like IPAs because of that, and this one, I really like and can drink, and so that sort of aftertaste that it would leave was to me why I didn't like a lot of IPAs, and this one is very, I don't get that, and the oats and that creaminess you said, I think really makes that mouthfeel a lot better, and you don't get that aftertaste.
Once you get past the initial acceptance and excitement of the history here, what do you think, or for you, what is your mission statement? What is your core commitment so that, Mike, when you're making beer, is there a thread that runs through there? I know you have a personality that, as a brewer, that you like to exemplify. But is there a code or a core, or this is our lane and this is where we're going to stay here at Vansay?
I think, like we've already said, we wanted to make a better beer every day. I mean, that was our major goal and core,
Stay true to tradition.
Stay true to tradition. Obviously, we're lager. We love lagers. People come in here and are very refreshed to see 4 or 5 lagers. And, there's 4 or 5 IPAs that go with them, but they're very refreshed to see that there's 4 or 5 lagers usually on at all time. But our core was make sure we like beer that tastes like beer. And brew it the best we can. And Mike's done a heck of a job at it.
What's number 3?
Number 3.
Number 3 is our Vienna lager. We just won breweries in PA. Breweries in PA.
Breweries in
Best lager and
Best lager in PA for our Vienna lager. So that's this one. It's
This has been my favorite since day one. So.
It's one of my favorite styles.
Rick, I think everyone is your favorite. I think if I roll back and go back to the recording.
I can't remember if it was this one or the Hellas that was actually, I think you released it on June 7th was my birthday, the first time we ever did it. I'm like, you must have did that for me. So.
Rick would really appreciate your cards and birthday well wishes on June 7th. June 7th is Rick Day here at the brewery. So talk about this, Mike.
So our Vienna. It's a little bit overbuilt. It's bordering on Marzen, but deep bready flavors, pretzel, bright crust, a little bit of caramel in there, and just nice dose of Hallertau Mittelfrüh kind of round it out.
And then coming off a side pour faucet with that nice creamy head on there, it's just beautiful beer.
Again, for somebody that is not, all right, this is a lager, this is a Vienna lager, what makes this a Vienna style?
It's really about the base malt. It's really centered on Vienna malt, which is it's killing a little bit darker than like a Pilsner malt. So again, like a lot of those bready notes, like bread crust, pretzel. It's a little bit maltier than like a Pilsner. It's somewhere in between like a Pilsner and a Marzen. It still has like that copper color, good maltiness to it, and good drinkability. Most lagers are pretty drinkable though. So.
They are, but let's face it. There's character here, and of everything that we've had, thus far, and even the things that I've had when I've come to your tap room, you do not fall short on flavor. You do not fall short on personality.
Yeah, there's really no corners cut to that. I mean, if it's a Vienna lager or a Zellers lager, it's 100% German ingredients, all brought in from Germany. So it's trying to be as true to that tradition as possible.
And you mentioned pretzel, and I almost get this salty, soft aftertaste if I just ate a pretzel. And that's a wonderful lingering feeling, and I guess that goes back to the malt that you're talking about. But this is delicious, and I can certainly understand why this would win not just one award, but many awards.
Yeah. There's a lot of good Vienna lager brewers around us, and we're just trying to find our place there, and I think we're doing an okay job so far. There's always room for improvement in there.
What would you like to see improved? Because this is delicious.
More people drink it. That wouldn't be improved.
More people to drink it? Well, Jay, you bring up a great point, because you're kind of in that place where in the beer world, you're still, even in the craft beer scene, it's still about an education. Rick, you said, I didn't even know what a grisette was. And there are probably quite a few other beers that have not been brewed or have not been brought to the masses. We're always, Dawn and we're always finding new beers that we can say we've never had, or a style we haven't had before, or a personality take on a beer that we've never tried. Where do you feel that as a brewery is, interjecting that with the customer, an education, or just finding a new, this might be your new favorite beer?
I think it's one of the beautiful things about the craft brewery revolution. I mean, you couldn't go into a bar 10 years ago and find the kind of styles you see on tap at all these beautiful little breweries. And some of them are doing, their own take on that, and some are doing more like us, the traditional take on it. But to be able to come in there and get a flight of 4 beers and be that vast and styles, and hopefully someone, like we take pride in our people behind the bar, can actually tell you a little bit something about that style, or what a side pour faucet actually does, or why it's important. Those are the things I think that really kind of take it from being going to a bar and order a beer experience to come into a brewery and get here's a style and why it's important experience.
You talked about Dad setting up the chair, watching the brewery being built. What's his follow-up take on now beer being poured, and some of these styles that maybe, hey, we never had this, or
he wants more hazies.
He wants more hazies.
Don't think so.
Well, it's ironic. Our dad does not drink anymore, so
that's very interesting. That's fascinating.
But he likes to come for Cousin's Maine Lobster Day, and then he makes Eric buy his lobster for him.
He actually did try the Little St. Rick.
Yeah, which I was surprised.
I was shocked. He said, "Can you pour me that? I'd like to
many years
try it." I was like, "Are you
He's a man
sure,
of few
Dad?"
words, so to see him at the corner of the bar just sitting there with a smile, you've done what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, and that's what it is. I mean, they usually take these last 2 chairs, which during the day is Mike's spot, but
That's my office at the bar.
that's his office. But you could just tell by the smile on his face that I don't think he tells us, I'm very proud of you guys for doing that, but I think that smile tells us that he's very proud that we pulled this off. And we've had cousins here that with their fathers working at Schmidt's, and he wanted to do a craft brewery himself when he left Schmidt's and never was able to do it. And I know they come in here and they're very proud that we were able to pull this off and do it, and keep that family legacy going.
Same with Adam Rossetti, the last brewmaster at Schmidt's, has been an incredible resource for myself and the guys here. Just getting the recipes together and making sure I'm doing it right.
Yeah, he's real good at it. Like, so when we went through the interview process, Adam was with us too, and
I had to sit down with him.
And Adam,
was that intimidating for you, Mike?
Adam asked those technical brewing questions, and when we all sat down after we finished that interview process, I think we had 5 or 6 that we were interviewing, and we all liked Mike, and he's like, Mike was at the top of his list as far as, answering those brewing questions that maybe the 3 of us we've all sort of brewed a little bit, but we don't know. We couldn't do what we're doing today, and especially today, everyone said you better hire someone who knows what they're doing on the brewing side. That you can't just be a home brewer and open a brewery like this with as many craft breweries that are out there. So it was very important to us to find a brewer, a head brewer that knows what he's doing, making great beer, and so far, it's been great. So,
Rick, you said something really interesting in my mind that I really wouldn't have thought about where the craft brewing scene is today. But this is not where you just make some beer in your garage or basement and you decide to open up a little corner, what have you. You better know what you're doing. And you better know, it's not, because we meet a lot of craft breweries or craft brewers, and some of them may know brewing, but they don't have that business sense about them. And I think that's where either they succeed or fail, or it's like trial by fire. But the thought that you have, that you said, you better know what you're doing, because you only did you really feel like you had one shot at this?
Without a doubt. I mean, back in the early 90s, you could come out with a brewery and, it was craft beer. People loved it. Now that same drinker is so in tune to what's right, what's wrong. Back then it was just craft. It was cool. Even if it was not the best beer, you were loving it, right? Now with how many are in the U.S. and every year the quality just continues to get pushed up, and those are the ones that survive. It's the quality that's not there is kind of getting picked out very early. So we knew early on that the quality was number one. We had to make sure there was a good quality beer, and that's how bringing on a good commercial brewer like Mike just really made that smooth sailing for us.
Well, it's an interesting story. I mean, everybody knows Dogfish Head. When he started back in the 90s, he'll tell you, he put out some pretty crappy beer in the beginning. And a lot of people say if Sam, and I don't know how to say his last name, but if he was able to start...
He doesn't know how to say your last name either. So it's
okay. He's got a tough last name as well. But if he was to probably start a brewery today with as many breweries and do it the way he did it back then, he probably wouldn't survive. I think there was a mystique around just, oh, wow, you guys are making this. I don't think people maybe cared about the quality at that point. They just thought it was cool because there were so few of them, and no, I'm going to go to that brewery. So nowadays I don't think a guy like that would survive, and obviously he survived, and
you said something really interesting, because it's timing. It took 2020 for Von C to be that right time. It's like, could George Perrier own an open Lebec today in the same style that he did it back then? I don't think so. Could Dogfish Head start the same way today? In that same, hey, we'll brew some stuff, see where it goes.
Even more recently, like Treehouse, I don't think what they're doing is going to be repeated. Being able to sell that much barrelage out your back door, I think that
everything he sells out their back door, right? Pretty much.
Well, not the scale they're doing. Everything they sell, is going out their back door. But I don't think even that model is repeatable.
Because they've gotten so big and they have such a big following, right? Yeah,
they're growing their own hops now too, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, but you talk about where your place is when you start and the impact you make. You can still do this or you can't do that, but you just find your place and you do what you do. And that's what you're doing, I think, right?
Yeah, that's part of the plan for sure. Let's do the beers we like and do them well.
There was 4, and Jay, you were like, wait till you try this, right?
So
you're being the first to try it. We haven't even released it yet.
Oh, really? Okay.
It's being released Friday.
We have a spoof. All right, so when we go and we release this podcast, this will already have been released. But we got to try it first.
Yeah, but you get to try it first. So
okay.
You can hop on there and rate it first. So this is another beer that we feel very strongly and proudly about. This is Pryor Preferred. Pryor Preferred has a long history. So it was first brewed by Adam Scheit back in the 40s.
That's a local brewery down the street from us in Norristown here that was eventually owned by Schmidt's.
Yep. So the main importer for Pilsner Urquell, obviously when the war broke out, lost basically his entire business because he couldn't import it. The story goes that he went up and down and visited 200 some breweries to try and find someone who could make him a Pilsner Urquell clone. And what he came up with was Pryor. and prior was brewed at Adam Scheit for many years. The executive who kind of brought it out kind of had to put his neck on the line, because at that point in time, no one thought Adam Scheit would be able to put out and sell a premium beer. No one's going to buy it. It ended up being the largest profitable beer that they ever made. It was not the biggest selling, but it made the largest profit margin for them because it was a higher end beer. And it came on and unfortunately disappeared with the closing of Schmidt's, but we did a lot of research, and this is Mike's take to getting as close as he can to the original prior that was brewed at Adam Scheit Brewery.
I'm curious. By the way, I love this. I love the unique aftertaste to this. And Mike, when you talk about trying to recreate this, what process have you gone through? You said you've done research. Are there old logs that you're finding that you go through and purchase orders of ingredients? How do you formulate and come together to create this?
Well, again, our first order of business was to try and get Rich Wagner to do as much historical digging as he could to come up with it. Obviously, having the last master brewer, Schmidt's Adam Rossetti, on the team, he can go back and learn what was brought to him when he was the master brewer. And him and Mike did a lot of research, and this is what they came out with.
We did the last check pills I did was kind of a first attempt at it, and we kind of took what we learned from that one and kind of did a little tweaking to get it more in line with what we thought was a more appropriate representation of the style.
It would be really interesting to bring this, have all those people still around the table, right? But I think that's what you're doing with this. You're bringing those people back to allow that same experience to come through, and paying homage to the lineage and the experiences that Schmidt's and now Von C bring to the world.
Well said.
This is delicious. I mean,
I told you how proud our dad is just with the way he smiles at us, but I really wish that my granddad would, he passed away pretty young, and I don't think we all remember him that much, but I think he would be ecstatic over what we were doing.
One of the beautiful things that, at least for our experience right now, is that we're getting to drink history, past and future. And that just, it lifts up the experience. It really does.
So it's good when you can tie it to a story, and that story is not just a marketing thing that's thrown out there. It's actually documented history, and as you said, we can go back into old brewing journals and try and find some things here and there. It's pretty cool.
There must be some other ones that are still on the list that you want to put together, right?
There are a lot.
There are, definitely.
So
the one thing too, we're doing all of our own right now, all of our own sales, our own distro, and Jay, we all make deliveries, but Jay pretty much does all the deliveries in our van every week, and we always say, we have a story to tell. We're building our brand one case at a time. Well, interesting. We just recently read a story about our granddad, and during the 50s through the 70s when he was the president, the growth of Schmidt's was tremendous at that point. And we read the story, and the last line of the story, when they asked how things were going, he goes, "Well, we're barreling along." So someone said we need to put that on the wall, like these, we're barreling along, or so that sort of fits in perfectly with we're building our our brand one case at a time. So barreling along.
You mentioned barrels, and you look at 1860s, 1800s. There were barrel houses. There were barrel caves in some cities that they had before the opportunity to put that lager into refrigeration, and that was more of the older method, right?
Yeah, I think they call them ice houses.
Yeah,
if I'm not mistaken,
but is that something? Today we have all these new methods, but if you make something in more of that traditional style, is maybe that on the radar in the future, or just something that is maybe too far back to even deal with?
These guys buy me a new brew house. We have a very old, very well used brew house here that was started life up in
Thomas Hooker
Brewery.
Yeah.
But that's one of the challenges for us too, in trying to recreate these styles with modern equipment and trying to hit that flavor profile without some of the more traditional methods.
So the business. So that's curious for me, because the business plan is, 1993. There were a lot of things that weren't in place in 1993, but 2023, there's some old methods of things that to recreate a flavor profile or a personality of a beer. Is that something on the idea plan? That
Definitely. I mean, anything we can do to kind of bring that history out and about. Those brewers back then, I mean, it was more art form compared to the brewers of today. Now it's a balance of art form and science and everything else. So yeah, I mean, having the ability to do those things is great. We can adjust water profile for what we're trying to brew. Where way back then they didn't know that. They didn't. Why can't I brew that great of a lager here in England? Water profile is probably not the best for it. So having Mike with a mixture of all those things that it takes to be a brewer today that's key.
Number five
is Midnight in the Priory. That's our Schwarz beer.
This one we're super proud of.
Yeah, this is my favorite beer.
I love the smokiness right on the nose.
I'm not going to say it's my favorite because I think everyone.
This is number 5.
I'll say this is my wife's favorite though.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Schwarz beer.
I do like it.
It's a black lager. It's a really wonderful style. It tends to be a harder style to sell, but if you can just get somebody to try it, and if you can explain that it's not a stout, it's more of a black pilsner in a way. Then they're a little more open to trying. And once people try it, they're like, oh, this is a very drinkable beer.
Yeah, we had
they
it
see
at
the dark color and they're expecting something more along the lines of a stout or a porter or something.
Yeah, we just did a beer fest at Ardmore Music Hall, and we had we brought a keg of this as well. And there's some all you have is a dark left, and we're like, and Jay's like, just try it. It drinks a lot later than that dark look. It's not a heavy stout or anything like that. And most people, when they try it, they kept coming back for it. So I think people are afraid of it at first if they're not into those dark beers.
We wanted to call it "Don't Be Afraid of the Dark," but unfortunately that name was already taken. But again, it finishes.
Did you spell it DARKE? Because maybe that would have worked.
Yeah.
Well, Schmidt's it's another take on the Prior. Schmidt's did a Prior Double Dark. It was actually an Adam Schweit beer that when Schmidt's took over, and that became very big for Schmidt's at the time. So that's why we sort of used the Priory. And Mike came up with that name. We thank Mike for that one. Midnight in the Priory. So.
Why do you think it is? I mean, again, it's lagers, it's pilsners. You talk about lagers, pilsners, and you talk about hey, I don't. Now I know why, Eric. Now I know why you didn't want to have a flight tasting. It's a fun Tuesday, right? What do you think it is about that consumer that just comes in? Oh, I only like pilsners. I only like stouts or where it's at. And then try something else.
That's. I mean, all of us take turns behind the bar, and it is pretty neat every time. What do you like? And they'll say something, and we'll try this. Well, they'll try it and then ask what it is. And it wasn't something that they said they liked originally. They're like, oh, well, that's pretty good. I'm like, well, open your mind, open your taste buds. Don't be so I'm pigeonholed into I can only have this kind of beer. Mike's opened my eyes to a few styles that weren't my favorite styles. But he'll bring out a beer that we'll have on sampling day and try it, and I'm like, well, all right, that's pretty good.
When's sampling day?
Every day.
Yeah, he knows whenever I'm working out that afternoon.
Well, Jay was saying when we do the our tours and everything, he goes, well, we try the beer all along the way. It's a tough job, but we do it for you to make sure that final product is perfect.
That's very appreciated, by the way.
But I'm not a huge sour fan, but the sour that we currently have, our plum sour, I actually
that's one of your
take no
favorites.
liking to. That's one of your favorites. Not one of my favorites. I will not say it's one of my favorites, but
you got it.
I think he did with a passion pineapple fruit one. I think you did that I really liked as well. So I've never liked sours before I got into this. I would never order a sour, and now that we brew them here, and I get to try everything that we brew. So it's it's opened up my taste buds a little bit to some of the beers that I probably would never have tried, if I didn't own my own brewery.
Yeah, so you got to try all Rick's 5 favorites. So is there anything on that list that you didn't try that you guys would like to try?
This is the beauty of it. We get to come back, and we get to try other things. And look, you're on the socials on Instagram and Facebook. How do people find you?
Eric, you're our IT guy. Come on, here's your chance. Here's your shot.
On the website, on the Facebook, so go to VonCBrewing.com.
VONC Brewing.com.
Yep. VONC, yep.
Yeah, you're old. There are new releases. There are old favorites. There are food trucks. You have food trucks here.
Yeah, so our tap room's open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Food trucks are usually here Thursday through Sunday. It's all on the website, and if you are an Instagram type person, it's posted out there on a weekly basis what we have going on. We have cornholes on Wednesday nights, Quizzos on Thursdays. Come out and check it out. We have a 2,500 square foot tasting room inside, about another 3,000 square foot tasting room outside when the weather's nice.
We do events.
Yeah, come try some good beer.
We have a big enough space that we're able to cordon off some sections and do events for people. We did just do a big event for the Darren Dalton Foundation last Friday. That was a private event that we actually closed. We don't do that very often here where we close on a Friday or Saturday, but we did it for the Darren Dalton Foundation because we had done we basically our Vienna, we white labeled and called it the 700 level lager. We put that out right as the Phillies. Well, the label came out. We thought the Phillies were doing real well when we decided to do this with the group called the Drunk Phils fans, and then the label came out and they were almost choking. But took it down to the last, and they got in, and then obviously we had that run. So
we were hoping we didn't jinx them.
We were afraid that we jinxed them. But
did you put out an Eagles, line today? Anytime?
No. We were a little scarred from the 700 level lager. Luckily,
but it was a great event.
Playoffs.
We in the sales of the 700 level lager and having our POS system be being able for people to add to that donation. We donated $1,000 ourselves, and we raised the Darren Dalton Foundation raised $12,000 last Friday or 2 Fridays ago when they were in here. So it was a ticketed event.
What I really love is Schmidt's Brewery was a mainstay in Philadelphia. Von C Brewery has become already, in a short time, a mainstay in the Delaware Valley area. And that's something that you and your family should be very proud of.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
That you took that first swing.
We have a long way to go, but it's.
Well, you
Jay does sometimes say we're the best kept secret in Norristown. When people come in, I live down the street. I've never heard of you.
It's a curiosity of mine to say, how has the Norristown community received this brewery?
It's been overwhelming.
It has been. We have a lot of just locals that live right up the street that are here regularly, and we have the Norristown police come in on their off times, and they are behind us 100%. They want us. They're backing us. If you ever have any problems, give them a call. But they want us to survive here. They want that stigmatism of Norristown to disappear and be a destination point that it once was, and they're hoping that a brewery and breweries have done well wherever they seem to go. They seem to gentrify that area, and they're hoping that we can do the same and start building Norristown back up. And
it's been good. We had our grand opening on June 5th, so we had a couple soft openings before that. Had one for all the contractors who worked on the project. That was well received and well attended. We had ones for friends and family, and thought we had enough beer in the tanks for 2.5 weeks. Ended up we ran out of beer in 2.5 days. So we had our grand opening.
Actually ran out in 1 day.
Yeah.
You're in good company, because so many breweries have said, we ran out and we thought we had enough.
We had to close our doors for 2.5 weeks and brew and get ahead of it.
There were some people like, what, you ran out of beer? I'm like, we took it as a good thing because we only were able to do 4 ales at that point, because ales are a couple of weeks in the tanks, whereas lagers are, upwards of 4 to 6, 8 weeks at, depending on what lager or pilsner we're doing. But, it was a funny story. So we decided that Friday night, okay, well, we can't be open the rest of the weekend. We don't have any beer left. And I came down that Saturday morning to put a sign on the door, and there were 2 people there that did not see it on our social media and stuff that we were not going to be able to open. But one guy, we had an ESB on for that soft opening, and he goes, I drove 45 minutes. He goes, I get out of the car. He didn't know I was the owner, and he's like, I didn't check the website before I came, but they're not open. They ran out of beer last night. And I said, well, I'm the owner. I said, he goes, I drove 45 minutes because you guys had ESB. I said, well, I happen to have about maybe a quarter of a sixel left of the ESB, so I brought him in, and I think I won a lot of goodwill with that particular customer because we had I gave him a few beers, and I gave him a couple crowlers to go home with, and so even though we weren't open and didn't have anything else for him, I think that helped early on with the.
And then we had our grand opening on June 5th, and more than 1,200 people came through those front doors. So the response from Norristown has been huge. The amount of people that can walk through the farm park, to walk their dogs here, it's great. We're so thankful to have our our regulars that are here all the time. It's neat to see.
Well, for Dawn and I, we're thankful for this time. And when we saw you open, Dawn, this was our first time here. I've been here before. We actually showed up, I think, New Year's Eve, and you were closed or something. We showed up on a holiday, you were closed, so we weren't able to see you at the door to make up on the goodwill. But this is really made up for that. This experience, I was so looking forward to this, and this has exceeded, what I had hoped for. And thank you for being a friend of Fermented Adventure, and we can't wait to see, the continued growth and success of Von C. If you're anywhere in the Philadelphia area, this is a place, this is a brewery that you need to visit. You can't leave. And if you're local and you haven't been here, get here. The beers are delicious. The history is amazing. You'll see all the Schmidt's memorabilia here. Come by here. Gentlemen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. And there you go. Cheers, Prost, bottoms up, all that stuff.